Hello and welcome to Connections 2, a sister series to our political engagement show. The aim of Connections 2 is to inform and inspire us through a series of guests on subjects that we believe will be of interest to you. We will bring you public and private figures, teachers, leaders, anyone with a story to tell, wisdom to impart, and lessons for us to learn. And speaking of lessons and learnings, we have a guest with us today who has just published a book on that very subject. Dr. Peter Rogers is a neuroradiologist and the author of Straight A from Stanford and On to Harvard, How to Learn Better and Think Faster. Or is that Think Better and Learn Faster? Welcome, Doctor. Thank you. Is it possible for a person to become smarter?
Yes, a person can become smarter. And the way I would look at that is there's multiple individual components of, being smarter in school, for example, or smarter taking a test, and smarter in life. And what one can do is try to improve each of those aspects. You can increase your attention, your concentration, your mental stamina is increased through exercise, your methods of encoding information, of memorizing them, of reviewing the information. All of these things, your nutrition, your sleep, how you manage your stress, they all contribute to your overall intellectual performance, thinking performance.
And what is the technique that you have developed? What is the difference between your approach to learning and the standard approach that students as a herd have been doing for a very long time?
Yeah, I think most students sort of do what everyone else in the class does, which is typically listen to the teacher, read the book, maybe do the homework problems, and then take the test. And there's actually a whole bunch of academic methods you can use to perform better in school. For example, pre-reading the material the night before leads to dramatic improvement. And then there's different techniques. One of them, for example, is spaced interval repetition systems with flashcards. And that's a review system with flashcards to make sure that you study the most challenging information more, which prepares you better for the test. Having a system of condensed notes. Being familiar with things like the letter number alphabet, word association techniques, mnemonics. Each one of these is a skill that the well-trained student can pick and choose to help them best memorize and know the information for that class.
And what about walk and talk? What is that technique?
Well, what walk and talk is about is that it's been shown that the brain continues to develop in adults. There's something called neurogenesis. When a person is walking, new neurons are formed in their brain. And these new neurons can acquire new information, form new connections. And where that comes from, and what's thought to be the reason for it, is that the human brain is like a survival machine. It's designed to be able to walk down a path in a forest and know how to survive. Your attention is high out in the woods. You have to know where's the potential food, potential water, shelter, potential predators, danger, your social group and connections, and it's all active, moving, and in context. And so an animal has to memorize its environment quickly in order to be able to survive, to prosper. And so walk and talk is about studying while you're walking. You need an area that's safe to walk, for example, in your house or perhaps some outside area near your house that is safe, or the school, but your attention is actually increased. I found, for example, I'll be tired reading a book, then I'll stand up and walk and I'll be able to read it very easily. Or I'll be able to listen to an audio book of the same book that was challenging for me to read, and it's easy to listen to. And for example, I'll do flashcards while I'm walking and talking, and you can expand walk and talk in multiple different ways. You can use it to self-test. What I mean by that is after you've studied a subject, you can walk around. Sometimes I'll even do it while I'm shooting a basketball, go back in a circle, shoot a layup, for example, and say back all the material to oneself. The benefit of self-test is you then have to produce the information in a new way, in an active way. When you say it, the speech part of your mind is active. Then you hear yourself say it. That's active. And you don't have a book in front of you, you're just doing this outside, that you were able to produce the information. And that level of self-test and productivity, going through multiple senses, multi-sensory, that makes you have the information a lot better.
That's fascinating. And you mentioned basketball, and of course your history, your athleticism, your role as a professional athlete infuses your teaching methods. Talk to us a little bit about how athleticism helps, how exercise helps, how that makes for a better student a better learning experience?
Yeah, there's several components to this. The exercise research first was done in animal studies, and what they found is, again, new neurons are formed in the hippocampus, memory center of the brain. In addition, the brain needs more oxygen when it is active, as part walking down a path in a forest, walking on a treadmill in an exercise environment. And so it forms new blood vessels called capillaries along the surface of the brain. That's called angiogenesis, and to get more nutrients to the brain. In addition, you have the new neurons, you have increased mitochondria form. Those are the energy factories of the individual cells, and you have increased glycogen storage, both in the muscles but also in the brain. What that means is more energy available for the next time a person's active and thinking. So basically your concentration power is increased, and your brain's capacity for intense, prolonged effort is increased from exercise. And it's also been shown in humans. One study I would mention to you is Naperville Central High School. They found by having the children walk on a treadmill for 30 minutes before math class, their math performance test scores improved 20%, which is a big difference. You know, it's 95 is an A, 75 is, you know, a C or a D, so that's a big improvement.
That's definitely from worst student to best student right there. Tell me about your condensed note taking. I have to say this chapter was dear to my heart because I didn't know that I would have survived law school without being able to condense an entire exam subject into maybe one word would trigger it, or a couple of words or a sentence. So talk about the value of condensed note taking for students to be able to cope with their subjects better.
Yes, it's good to have some system of information which you're going to accumulate through the course of, let's say, a semester-long class that you can review before the week, 2 weeks before your final exam. And condensed notes are very useful in that sense. You want them to be relatively concise, small amount of information from which the rest can be derived. My experience with learning about condensed notes was when I was at Stanford. I was in my freshman year. I was having a hard time with one of my chemistry classes, and I was lucky enough to know the guy who was about a semester ahead of me, who was at the top of the class. His name was Jay Ream. He's a brilliant guy. I said, Jay, how do I deal with this class? And he said, you need condensed notes. And the condensed notes, for example, in organic chemistry, I'd write out all the key equations. From the textbook I would take information, from the question books I would take information, from the lecture, and I would put it in a spiral notebook, only the stuff I needed. That way I wasn't going back and reviewing all the material. I was focusing on the key information as concise as possible. And by putting everything in there, I didn't have to go back to review those individual sources. I just went to my condensed notes to prepare for final exams. So that's a spiral notebook form of condensed notes. One can also use an outline format text and add information to it in the margins. You can write the page number of, let's say, an illustration or diagram for another book, and you have a go-to source to prepare for your semester class and, for example, a standardized test, which might be, you know, a year from now or 2 years from now.
And of course, the very process of condensing the notes is the brain learning. So you can't have another student do it for you. You must condense yourself, correct?
Yeah, it's absolutely right, because that's the key thing. It's a deeper level of processing. As you analyze the information and say to yourself, what is essential here? What is the key component from which I can derive the rest? You then are really thinking about that in a deep way, and it's that deep level of processing that makes you remember it better.
Lovely. And you really have looked at the student as a whole, not just the academics in the study room. You talk about nutrition and the role that plays in the student experience.
Yes, nutrition is a big subject, and there's a lot to it, but I'd say if I could simplify nutrition, here's what I would say. That complex carbohydrates, also called starches, with intrinsic fiber, are the best fuel for the human body. They're a clean burning fuel that gives you a lot of energy. And what they are is glucose molecules linked together, like glycogen, for example, in the human body, whereby individual glucose molecules have to be separated from each other and absorbed into the bloodstream. And what that leads to is a steady, normal blood glucose curve through the day where you feel good and your brain is sharp. Vegetables and fruits to some extent are the best sorts of nutrients, your vitamins, your minerals, your antioxidants. And that's another. I mean, there's a whole more beyond that. Mm-hmm. One little trick too, protein perks, carbohydrates calm. If you eat a big bowl of complex carbohydrate cereal, you might feel a little sleepy a couple hours after that. So it depends on the situation. Like before a test, I wouldn't eat as much cereal, for example. Mm-hmm. So there's more to it. Obviously, that's a big subject.
Yeah, you've really left no stone unturned. You also talk about the importance of a mentor. And again, this is something I have gravitated towards. And very topical, just this morning in NPR's Morning Shift, there was a discussion on the value of a college education, and it was concluded the role of that mentor not just helps a student do better in their careers, but have a general better sense of well-being. Talk to us a little bit about the role of a mentor, how to get a mentor, and how keeping a mentor throughout the process really contributes to the student's success.
Yeah, because we face challenging problems in our lives, and one of the fastest ways to solve a challenging problem is to find someone else who's already solved it and ask them to help you, to explain it to you. And so in a sense, it's like having a coach for whatever area of study or interest you are into at that time. So I was very fortunate to have Jay Ream when I was at Stanford, and then when I was in med school, I was friends with Charles Kinder. He's actually a cardiologist in this area. He was first in his class, and I asked him, for example, when I was having a difficult time with biochem, I said, what do you do in a class like this? He says, the key is just read the chapter the night before, and then when you go to lecture, you're ready for it, and you won't be overwhelmed. So mentors are tremendously important. You learn not just the academic material, you learn the whole social context. You learn all the stuff that you can't learn from a book, and it's a very helpful way to learn.
And on that social context, you also touch on the social aspect of learning and the difficulty of the balance between really good studentship, but also not isolation or depression or loneliness. So how does the student strike that balance?
Well, yeah, there's a couple things that factor in there. But first of all, I think social isolation is a very dangerous thing. Because if a person's depressed, they can get themselves into a cycle of negative thinking, and when they're socially isolated, they have no one to talk them out of it. Whereas when they're involved in a social network, they've got other persons to share ideas with, to do things with. Those are things that make a person happier. Spending time with friends, with family, doing something positive, helping other people. We're designed for that. And having social intelligence is just more important than academics. And I think a lot of people, some people will progress well in their careers, but they'll have more difficulty later if they haven't developed social intelligence, the emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and the other things related to that.
Lovely. You talk about, and it's clear to us what the value of these teachings are in high school and in college, but you also advocate the lifelong learning beyond the classroom, beyond traditional age. Talk to us a little bit about the value of mental agility in middle years and indeed in senior years when we really need that cognitive reserve.
Yeah, there's a fascinating study called the Notre Dame Nun Study, where a large number of nuns had volunteered to participate in a scientific experience, and it was shown that the nuns that had been more involved in reading and writing and that were more socially involved in activities in the community and whatnot, they maintained their intellectual sharpness much better. It was relatively rare for them to ever develop Alzheimer's. Quite a few of them were functioning very well intellectually in their late 80s and even in their 90s. Exercise, as we talked about, is very helpful for the brain. There's a Dr. James Rady, Harvard psychiatrist, who's described it as the miracle growth for the brain, and that's very important. One other book that I think is great is called Aging Well by George Valiant. He's a psychiatrist at Harvard that was in charge of several lifetime longitudinal studies where he inherited the data going back to about 1910, and they followed the lives of several different cohorts of individuals, and they found that the ability to form warm, positive relationships in life was the most important thing for prolonged high functioning in the older years. So that's a really interesting thing, and there's more about that as well, but that's a key thing. So staying socially engaged, having a hobby, helping people in whatever way it might be, all those things help a person to stay really sharp mentally as they age, and a person can function excellently even up into their late 80s.
That's excellent. And many of the themes that you discuss in your book and that we've talked about today really transcend the learning process. You talk about positivity, you talk about the value of love and friendships. There are so many of these timeless themes that are not just about a mental agility and learning, but really about a more happy, peaceful, successful life. So how do you wear the mantle of an inspirational teacher?
Well, I just share what I've learned from life, from experience, and I think that I wanted this book to really help people. I wanted to feel that I had done the best I could to create something positive, and helping other people, I believe it makes us happy because we have reward neurotransmitters released in our brain when we help other individuals. There's a survival benefit to that from a long-term, scientific context, if you will. And those are, in life, you look for win-win situations. You try to find peace of mind and happiness, and those are ways to increase it.
Oh, absolutely. And I have read Peter's book. It's a lot of material. It's made up of short little chapters, and I did find myself wondering, Peter, if the learning techniques you advocate led to you having many short chapters, very easily digested. So ultimately you have dense material in a very readable form. I'm sure that was intentional.
Yes, I try to make each chapter very short, typically 1 to 3 pages with, the print is kind of large print, keywords are in bold. I wanted it to be as easy as possible to learn from. And these techniques, a lot of them are simple, just as a question of awareness. There's a lot of things in life are like that. The key is awareness. Once you're aware of the option to pre-read the night before in your challenging classes, you can do it. Everybody's smarter and quicker the second time around that they're experience contact with the material.
And for many of our viewers, this may be a terrific gift for their child or even their grandchild. It might just be as valuable as helping out with the tuition. Peter, why don't you tell our audience where to find your book, what the cost is, the various ways that it's available, and indeed if they'd like to contact you, if that's possible, and how.
Yes, the book is called Straight A at Stanford and On to Harvard by Peter Rogers, MD. It's only available at Amazon.com in both the Kindle electronic book format as well as in the paperback format. The Kindle right now is on sale for $2.99, and basically this is 30 years of accumulated knowledge of being fascinated by learning and memory, academic performance, and it's all put into this book. A person wanted to contact me, they could send me a message on Facebook at Peter Rogers. And I try to answer if I got time as best I can, and I'd like the book to help people, and hopefully it's going to help a lot of people.
Well, I think it's a terrific read, and I believe it will be valuable to our viewers. And thank you so much, Peter, for joining us.
Thank you.
It was a terrific discussion, and thank you for watching. And please do continue to watch Connections 2 as we bring you guests who will hopefully inform and inspire us with their wisdom and knowledge. Thank you.